Hey Mike, you got any local stories that people have come in and told you lately?
Yeah, we've got some local ones. But we got one that actually was told to us by a man who had this event a number of years ago. It took place in 1983, and it wasn't here in this area, but it's such a great story. I think I want to share it. Okay, the man was in Kentucky. He was in the Army. He was a new recruit. He was out there in Kentucky at Fort Knox. And it's interesting because when he came in, I had just seen a TV show about Fort Knox where they're talking about how it's a major military base and they have all this this stuff for security because Fort Knox also is supposed to have the country's gold supply sitting in there, and so they put all this military stuff around it, both to protect it, but they also use it as a training ground. And so I was aware of that from the TV show. So it was interesting that he came in, and he was there doing training at Fort Knox in 1983. He was 17 years old. He said it was in the fall, October, November, and he was out to do on a 3-day mission to do some field training. And so they set up a camp in a clearing near the woods, and all the recruits were there and set up their little tents and what have you, and they were going to be there for a couple of days. And he said that the first night when they were there was uneventful. Nothing happened, but the second night he had something occur. And he said that food trucks would come in, and they were maybe 100 yards away down near the artillery range. And so everybody would be awakened at 4 in the morning, and they'd have to get up and get ready real quick and then head over to the to get the chow and have the breakfast. And so this fella was there, and he was standing in line with the rest of the recruits, and he realized that he had run off and forgotten his gloves. And he said that he was thinking, boy, I don't have my gloves, and it's pretty cold, and everybody else has got gloves. They're going to want to have gloves. And if I get caught with no gloves, then I'm going to get in trouble for not being completely in uniform because we're supposed to have gloves. So he decided he better go back, even if it meant skipping his meal. He felt that it was important that he go back and get his gloves so he didn't get caught by the drill sergeant without gloves. And so he sneaks back over there. Like I said, it's maybe 100 yards or more away from where the breakfast was and where all the light was, back to the darkened camp where the tents were. And so he comes into the camp, and he's got this little bit of no, he doesn't even have a flashlight. He's just kind of hoofing it. And he said it was very difficult to see where he was going, but he had a little light. And he found his tent, and he was approaching the tent, and then he became aware that there was somebody standing on the other side of the tent. And so he spoke out to him and said, "Oh, you forget something too?" No response. No response. So he says, "Hey, better look lively. We should get back out there. We're going to get in trouble." And still, this thing wouldn't reply. And he said it was just me and the thing and a tent. And the tent was just partially blocking my view of this thing. And there was tall grass, so I couldn't see all the way down to the ground. But it was a figure, and the figure was at least as tall, if not taller, than he was. So this figure's around 6 feet or more, but just a dark shadow, and it's totally quiet. But he said the thing turned, and he could tell that it was standing there, and it was looking right directly in his direction. Full shoulders and the head. And he said it had very little neck and really well-built muscles up on its shoulders. And you could just see this in the silhouette. And he said the thing was kind of doing this and moving back and forth from side to side. And it was going down like this, like it was taking an extra hard look. And he was kind of doing the same thing. He said he was leaning forward a little bit and scrunching his eyes up, trying real hard to see some features in this thing. And then he said about that time, and he had an M16 with him, but it was empty. They didn't give him bullets for it, but they had to carry him around, of course, to get used to it. So he didn't really have a weapon or anything, and he wasn't sure what was going on, but he was starting to think that this was something weird. This wasn't normal. And so he starts to back up a little bit, and just then one of the trucks evidently, moved, and the headlights from the truck, just for a second, flashed through the tent. You know, it's like having a lightning flash. And so just as the headlights scanned by, he got a glimpse of this thing and realized it was covered in hair. And so about then he's thinking, okay, well, I'm going to try and back out of here slowly so it doesn't automatically chase me. And he said he turned and he took a step or two slowly, and then he couldn't help himself. He was so terrified, he just took off running as fast as he could. And he said he ran all the way back and got in line. And of course, he's trying to tell people what he just saw back, 100 yards away. And nobody paid any attention to him. They all just laughed it off, shrugged it off. Yeah, that's funny. Ha, ha, ha. And he said that when the lights hit it, it seemed to have, it was covered with reddish, long reddish hair. And he said, I would have to say that its hair looked a lot like the hair on an Irish setter. So that's a pretty good story. The other one was a second-hand. This is one of our latest local stories. And this is one that we're going to have to take some time to follow up on, because this one came in second-hand, and it's not detailed. But a woman came in with her daughter, and they were visiting the museum and having a good time, and we were having conversation. And then she proceeded to tell me that her boyfriend, who she claims who grew up in this area, was living in a cabin up on the hills, up closer to the summit, higher up on the mountain. And he's been up there for years. He actually grew up there, and he's right there right now staying temporarily at his mom's place because he's out of work. But he supposedly has seen a family of Bigfoot in the area at some point, and she said that he indicated that at one point he might have actually stumbled upon a burial or a gravesite, and maybe one other thing that I don't recall. I don't have my notes in front of me. But anyway, this is secondhand information, so I asked her if she'd be willing to give us his name and phone number and so on, and she said sure. So we have his name, his phone number, his address, and what we want to do, of course, is we want to go out there and meet him in person in his own element and have him show us where his events took place, if indeed he had the events that she describes. So in the future we hope to do that.